Judge Jackson, we've heard criticism from some about your previous work representing detainees at Guantanamo Bay. In fact, for years, we've heard criticisms leveled against lawyers who have provided Guantanamo detainees with legal representation. This criticism misses one critical point. The right to counsel is a fundamental part of our constitutional sentence system, even for the most unpopular defendants. I want to thank Senator Graham, who served as an Air Force lawyer for decades, for offering his perspective yesterday. He said, and I quote, "The fact that you're representing Gitmo detainees is not a problem with me," Senator Graham said. "Everyone deserves a lawyer. You're doing the country a great service when you defend the most unpopular people." And then Judge Roberts said during his confirmation hearing, it's a tradition of the American bar that goes back before the founding of the country that lawyers are not identified with the positions of their clients. The most famous example probably was John Adams, Chief Justice said, who represented the British soldiers charged in the Boston Massacre. This sentiment is shared by lawyers across the political spectrum. I want to give you an opportunity to address this issue because it applies not just to Gitmo detainees, but to your work as a public defender in terms of the wisdom, if acceptability of providing counsel in those cases, and what impact it's had on you personally in terms of your rulings on the bench.
Thank you, Senator. September 11th was a tragic attack on this country. We all lived through it. We saw what happened, and there were many defenses, important defenses, that Americans undertook. There were Americans whose service came in the form of military action. My brother was one of those Americans, those brave Americans who decided to join the military to defend our country. There are others of you in this body who have military service, and I honor that, to protect our country. After 9/11, there were also lawyers who recognized that our nation's values were under attack, that we couldn't let the terrorists win by changing who we were fundamentally. And what that meant was that the people who were being accused by our government of having engaged in actions related to this under our constitutional scheme were entitled to representation. We're entitled to be treated fairly. That's what makes our system the best in the world. That's what makes us exemplary. I was in the Federal Public Defender's Office when the Supreme Court, right after the Supreme Court decided that individuals who were detained at Guantanamo Bay by the president could seek review of their detention. And those cases started coming in, and federal public defenders don't get to pick their clients. They have to represent whoever comes in, and it's a service. That's what you do as a federal public defender. You are standing up for the constitutional value of representation. And so I represented, as an appellate defender, some of those detainees. In the early days, the legal landscape was very uncertain. This had never happened before, not only the attack, but also the use of executive authority to detain people in this way. And there were a lot of questions that the court was asking. The Supreme Court had taken a series of cases to try to understand what are the limits of executive authority, which is important. All of our liberty is at stake if we don't get it right in terms of what the executive can do. The Supreme Court has recently reaffirmed that the Constitution does not get suspended in times of emergency. And so lawyers were trying to help the court to figure out what the executive's power was in this circumstance And as an appellate defender, I worked on the habeas petitions of some of these detainees. My petitions were virtually identical because we had very little information. Part of the issue at the very beginning of these cases was that most of the factual information was classified. So defense counsel were appointed to represent these defendants. We had no facts, and I was making legal arguments about the circumstances. That is what gave rise to my representation, and I would just emphasize that that's the role of a criminal defense lawyer. Criminal defense lawyers make arguments on behalf of their clients in defense of the Constitution and in service of the court.